Hi, Jill Spiegel. Welcome to A.PUTNAM's Women in Golf.
Thanks, Allison. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. We're so excited to talk to you. Just hear how golf has played a role in your life. What took you from the beginning of your career and probably personal life to where you are today as president of PGA Tour Superstore. So, with that, we will get started with the question we always start with, which is how did golf come into your life and when?
Well, it's funny because I grew up. I was a swimmer and a runner. I started swimming when I
Mm-hmm.
was 5, so I was always an athlete. And my mom and dad were big golfers, so my mom was always encouraging me to get out on the golf course, and I never really wanted to. And she's like, "You need to get on the golf course. It's an important skill to know. It will be with you your whole life." So I joined the four holers when I
Oh,
was a
cool.
teenager. I was probably me and the little the little kids. And then I progressed to the nine holers. So I did learn how to play golf when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went away to school and started my career, and I would play when I would come home to visit my parents.
Yeah.
But that was really it. So I was very much a sporadic golfer. And then that part of my life was put on hold when I started my family, my career in my
Mm-hmm.
family. And I really didn't play golf for probably 30 years. And I ended up at the PGA Tour Superstore 13 years ago, and golf became part of my life again. And when I started, I had the soft goods side of the business, and back in 2016, I picked up hard goods. So I didn't have a choice because I had a lot of situations where I was playing golf with high level people,
Sure.
from these golf companies, and I'm like, first of all, I need to play, and second of all, I need to learn how to play. So it became a bigger part of my life, and I love it. And about 4 years ago, my husband and we moved and we joined a local club,
Mm-hmm.
and now he plays golf too. And both my boys are into it. Last
Cool.
June, we took a family trip to Ireland, so it's really fun because
Isn't it
it's
neat?
it's it's not only what I do for a living, but it's part of our lifestyle. We've
Yeah.
met so many friends doing it. So we live and breathe golf every day.
That's
As a matter
too
of fact,
funny.
the house we live in now is on a golf course. So I'm like,
Yeah.
everything's golf. So it's been terrific. And it's funny when I look back on pictures of my mom and dad. Every picture I have of them, just about, is them on some kind of golf vacation. They never
Yep.
went anywhere without their golf clubs.
Oh,
So
it's so great. And
yeah,
it's a lifetime sport. That's what's so special about it. So
totally.
you'll be able to play for years with your kids and
Hmm.
grandkids hopefully and things like
Yeah.
that. So that's the best part about it. And it's funny, I resonate with your story because my dad had introduced the sport to me for that very reason. He's like, I mean, my dad, but he's also a business mentor. It's kind of a serial entrepreneur he is. And he, from when I was probably 6, was like, you will learn how to play golf. It will be an important, part of your career, one way
Hmm.
or the other. So, not knowing whether I'd go to, the business route or not, but it did. And it certainly paid off. And my relationship with golf is very similar. I'm a very casual golfer, and it's been
Hmm.
just a sport I've enjoyed with my husband and now boys. And so it became a bigger part of my life. And that's, where all this started. But I have to back up a little bit because I think it's always
Okay.
interesting to hear how, you know, well, one, just kind of where you're from and where
Hmm.
you went off to school. Let's start there. And then I've got a couple questions in between.
Okay. Okay. So I grew up in Michigan, so
Okay.
not too far from you.
Yep.
And I was there my entire life. Like I said, I spent a lot of time in the swimming pool and running when I was little, and I swam at Michigan State for a year, and then
Huge.
I hung it up. I was done. Too many hours looking at the black line on the bottom of the pool. So
I
I
mean,
was
the
there. I
next you
graduated
won,
from there,
right?
and I moved. My older sister lived in Atlanta, and
Mm-hmm.
she worked for a department store here, a division of Federated. And
Yep.
she encouraged me. I would visit her on spring break, and she encouraged me to give Atlanta a try. So I was an advertising major, but I joined the training program for Riches, the division of Federated at the time, which is now
Mm-hmm.
Macy's, and ended up in retail. And really, I didn't think that's what I wanted to do long term, but it was my ticket to Atlanta. So I did
Yeah.
it. And here I am many years later, still in retail. So that's how I ended up in Atlanta. I followed her. And then I met my husband probably 9 months after I moved here. So we've been married a long time, and we've raised our family here. So it's I still consider Michigan home just because I grew up
Yeah.
there. I have two brothers there, and I love it. I love everything about it. And but we've been here our whole adult life, so
Neat.
that's how I ended up here.
Okay, and that makes sense. So on to this whole apparel side of things, because I think it's um obviously a very complex industry, and it's
Hmm.
I think a lot of different ways to get into it. And from your standpoint, obviously being an advertising major, did you jump into this training with under Federated as, on the marketing team, or were you in operations? Where did you start when you entered into kind of the apparel industry?
Yeah, I was a trainee, and they bounce you around a little bit so you get exposure
Yeah.
to everything.
Yep.
And my first job ended up being in the buying office. So I was an
Got
assistant
it.
buyer for women's fragrances, which was a lot of fun.
Uh-huh.
Anywhere I went, I could tell you what somebody was wearing.
Oh,
It was
no
like
doubt. I bet.
a gift, yeah. Back in the Giorgio Armani days. So
Oh my gosh, so cool.
um,
You had to have had a cup of coffee beans at your desk. I can't imagine.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
that's how I started. And then when I was very, very young, one Christmas, one of our stores, one of our bigger stores in the chain, needed a cosmetic sales manager. So they said, we need you to do this. It's Christmas. It's a huge time of year for retail, especially cosmetic and fragrances. So they said, we need you to
Hmm.
go run the cosmetics department. So I did that. I was young. I was like 20, 23 years old, maybe. And I had a group of like 30 or 40 women working for me. So it was quite an
Wow.
experience. So I jumped into that and I spent, probably 5 years in the stores. I loved the stores. And
Did you?
I really did. It's a grind and you work long
Hmm.
hours, a lot of nights, weekends, holidays. One Christmas I
Yeah.
was all by myself.
Yeah. Schedule's
Um,
tough, right?
it's really, really tough, but I loved it. But my sister, who convinced me to move to Atlanta, she worked for the same department store that I did, and she was in the buying office. So she's like, Jill, you should consider coming to the buying office. It's so much better. You'll have a better life. You won't have to work weekends. You can go home for Christmas.
Yeah.
So I took her advice and I did it, and I loved it, and I'm really glad I made the change. But I'm glad that I had the experience that I did in the stores because I think when you're a buyer, you do a better job and you have a different perspective if you know what the stores are dealing with. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't have traded that experience for anything. But once I went into the buying piece of it, I spent a lot of time buying and planning for different categories. Um, I never went back out to the stores because I really loved it.
Yeah.
And I was a junior buyer, and then I worked my way up, and I was when we started our planning division, I was one of the first planning managers of planning,
Oh, interesting.
and yeah, and then many different areas. I was a swim buyer for years. That was a great category and so much fun. That was one of my
Oh,
favorite
I
jobs. I
bet.
loved that job.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and then I ended up I was a divisional merchandise manager for I don't know, 6 years, and I had young men's and boys age 20. So you can
Mm.
appreciate that. So I had
Yep.
little boys, but I also had young men's, which was at the time, it was all the urban brands, all the hip hop brands. It's when all
Oh,
those brands
yeah.
were coming on the scene, like FUBU and Fat Farm, and maybe too
Yes.
young to know all this,
No,
but
no, I do. Yeah, I remember
like
that.
Tommy Hilfiger denim and all those brands.
Yeah.
So that was quite a whirlwind, and it was a very fast paced, trendy business. So that was a lot of fun. And then I ended up back in planning, and I was a VP of planning.
Mhm.
And
And at
then,
that time, had you started your family in the midst of all that?
well, I had my first son, Steven, what was I doing then? Actually, I was pregnant with him when I was in a planning job, and we ended up merging with another division of Federated, and I ended up not keeping my existing job. I remember it was Valentine's Day.
Hmm.
I was about to have him, and I
Oh
ended
my
up in a buying
gosh.
job, and I was really disappointed at the time because that meant traveling. And the job I was in, I really didn't travel much. I'm like, oh, I have to travel. I'm about to have this little baby. But in retrospect, it was the single best thing that ever happened to me in my career because it got me back into buying, which is really where my passion was. But I'd had the planning experience. And then when I was a divisional of young men's, that's when I had my second son, and that was tough because that's a hard job. It's a
Hmm.
very You have a big team. It's very fast paced. There's a lot of financial pressure to hit your numbers, not only every season, but every quarter and every month. So it's very, very stressful. My husband at one point said to me, he goes, "You're only happy when your business is good," because it
Oh,
was, it
yeah.
was, it was tough. And I had a baby at the same time, and I was spending two
Yeah.
weeks, 2 weeks every month in New York. But we
Oh my
had a good
gosh.
balance. Yeah, he's a physical therapist, and he didn't travel,
Mhm.
so we were able to manage it. And there was a spread with our kids, so it was, we made it work. We made it work, and and then back in 2009, Federated had acquired Macy's, and everything consolidated to New York City. And
Mhm.
I'd accepted a job, and then we changed our mind at the last minute. So I know we just didn't want, I just didn't want the 3 hours of commuting every night,
Oh my
and
gosh, I can't
you know,
imagine.
my husband was going to have to find a new job, so we changed our mind at the last minute
Yep.
and didn't go. But my division here in Atlanta was going away basically.
Mhm.
So I went to Belk department store for 2 years. But they're based in Charlotte, but it was a job in
Okay.
Atlanta. And then I heard about, it was funny because PGA Tour Superstore at the time I'd never heard of, even though it was based in
Mhm.
Atlanta, because it was a small company at the time. And I had two different
What
people.
year was that, do you
That was
think?
2011.
Okay.
So I had left Federated, gone to Belk, and I liked my job at Belk, but I knew I was going to have to eventually move to Charlotte, which I didn't really want to do. So I
Mhm.
had two different friends tell me about this job at the PGA Tour Superstore, and they were looking for someone. They had a lot of people. It's a long story, but some people from Home Depot started the company, and they had a lot of golf people, but they didn't have a
Mm.
lot of people with traditional retail experience.
Yeah.
And so they had hired a headhunter, and they were looking for someone that, when I say they, Arthur Blank is the owner of our company, and
Mhm.
Dick Sullivan was the president and CEO at the time. And Dick and Arthur knew that the margin rich side of the business was apparel.
Mhm.
So they wanted somebody with my type of background for the job. They didn't want necessarily somebody from the golf industry. They wanted somebody who understood flow of product, timing, markdown cadence, all the things that go, as
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah,
go along
so
with apparel.
relevant. Right.
Yes. So I talked to them, and I interviewed with Dick, and really liked him a lot. And I knew nothing about the company. And I interviewed with Arthur. And, when you live in it, I mean, everybody knows Arthur Blank, especially when you live in Atlanta. He owns
Yeah.
the Atlanta Falcons. So I had an interview with him at his house, and I was like, oh my God, I'm sitting in Arthur Blank's
Oh my
house.
gosh,
And
right.
yeah, so I left that interview. I'm like, you know what? I don't know much about this company, but if Arthur Blank's involved, and I was really impressed with Dick, there's got to be something here.
Mhm.
Um, so it was a little bit of a risk at the time, and the company wasn't doing well, candidly. I didn't know that, but they were really kind of, Dick had to come in and make a lot of changes, probably 18 months before I started, and really start getting a structure in place. And so when I started, the company was still just doing okay. So it was a little bit of a leap of faith, but I'm not a huge risk taker. And I'm like, I'm gonna do this at this point in my career. Why not? I was at Federated for
Look at where
24
it
years,
landed
Belk
you.
for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my whole background, aside from retail, growing up was athletics. So
Mhm.
I'm like, what a perfect way to marry
Merge
what I
that.
do for a
Yeah.
living and my passion. And even though I wasn't golfing a lot at the time, I'm like, this is so cool. And so I did it, and here I am, like 13 years later, and companies just evolved so much. And I
That's
started
so
with,
neat.
we had 11 stores, not doing very well, and today we have, we're actually opening our 68th store this weekend. So we've
It's
been on this,
crazy.
even pre-COVID, yeah, we've been on this huge growth trajectory the last several years, and it's been really fun, because when I started, it almost felt like a startup.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of work to be done, and we had maybe 30 people in the office in the store support center, and today we have 180.
That's incredible.
So it's really been fun to be part of the growth. And even though we weren't the founders and the ones that initially started it,
Yeah.
it kind of feels like we built the company from the
That's so
time that
neat.
Dick and Arthur took over.
That's
Yeah, so
amazing. And so
it's been great.
that's really neat. And when you were interviewing with Arthur, what was that for, the president position, or was it at the start of
Oh
your
no,
career with, that was when you
no,
started. So
yeah.
What role was that? What
It
job was
was
that?
vice president of soft goods. So it
Okay, okay.
was men's and women's apparel and
Yep.
footwear.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything about golf equipment, so it was just the soft goods side of the business. And we were small. The company was really small. And and Dick said, he's like, "You're going to be the VP of soft goods, but I also want you to be the men's buyer at the same time." So it's like, wow. Okay, so
So
I did
there's
that
your
for about,
startup.
yeah,
There's your nod to
yeah.
startup
We
is wearing all
we
those hats.
Yep, we call ourselves like, working executives. And
Yeah, it's cool.
maybe 9 months in, I turned to him and I said, there's a lot of work that needs to be done here, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
loving it, but I need a little bit of help. So that's
Yeah.
when I brought in Beth, who's our men's merchant, and
Mm-hmm.
we had worked together our whole career, and I knew, I'm
Oh,
like, I
cool.
need a couple people with my similar backgrounds who can really help
Mm-hmm.
me, get the right structure in place, get some reporting in place. And so she was my first outside hire. And it's been fun. It's been a journey. And I started in 11, and it was maybe 4 or 5 years before we were growing our top line sales. We weren't really making money at the time, but
Yeah.
then we started to get profitable, and that's when things really turned around.
That's
Maybe 4 or 5
incredible.
years into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I know we were talking just upon introduction that you've been in this role as president now for, you said, a year and a half.
A year and a half. Yeah. So it evolved. So I started with soft goods, and then
Mm-hmm.
I had a counterpart who started, I don't know, 8, 9 months after me, Randy, and he knew the golf. He came from sporting goods, and he knew the golf industry really well. So he was running the hard goods side of the business, and I was running the soft goods side of the business. And together, the two of us, we restructured the merchandising team, got the right people in the right places. And then maybe 5 years into it, Dick turned to us and he said, "I don't need both of you guys running merchandising." He said,
Mm-hmm.
"Jill, you're going to run merchandising, and Randy, I want to give you another exposure." And Randy, who you've probably met, he went on to run stores. So he moved on and was
Got it.
chief
Mm-hmm.
operations officer while I did merchandising. So it was really fun for me to learn that piece of the business, because I knew soft goods, but I really didn't know anything about equipment and
Mm-hmm.
accessories. So, I picked that up in the beginning of 16. And so that's when I got to know the Callaways of the world and TaylorMades. And,
Oh,
um, and I did.
yeah. I couldn't tell if it was me or you. I know my computer's been freezing,
Yeah,
but
you've been.
it's.
Okay.
I Well, I think you were just
Okay.
talking about that just the benefit of
Getting into
jumping over to
hard
hard
goods.
goods. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I'm rambling on too much, you can tell me.
No, no, no. It's all so great. You're fine.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. So anyway, so when I picked up hard goods, that's when I started interacting with, the big manufacturers: Callaway, Titleist,
Mm-hmm.
Ping, TaylorMade. Don't want to leave anybody out.
Mm-hmm.
And I really had to learn that piece of it. I mean, I wasn't the buyer, so I didn't need to know all the technical
Yeah.
aspects of it. But that was fun for me, and it was really different. And it's everyone always talks about what a male-dominated industry golf is, which
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So all of a sudden I went from all these apparel meetings to you know hard goods meetings, and sometimes I was the only woman in the room. So
Yeah.
that was a little intimidating at first, but you get over it. And everybody's always treated me great, so I never really felt any different, even though I
Mm-hmm.
was one of the few women um, doing it. But so that was great. And then so I did that for, well, all through COVID until fall of 22. And we've grown so much that Dick saw the need for a president.
Mm-hmm.
So I was lucky enough that I was the one that got picked for the role. So
That's
it's
amazing.
it's been a journey, and it's been great. And the last, our business during COVID just, we were growing anyway. And then what happened to the golf industry during
Yep.
COVID. I mean, people were working from home. They wanted to be outside. They had more flexibility in their
Yeah.
schedule. So, I mean, rounds of golf have grown 20% since COVID.
Yep.
And our business has doubled since
I don't
19,
doubt
which
it.
is
Mm-hmm.
tremendous. And and it really hasn't regressed at all. So, um, so we added a ton of people to our office, and that's when, so in the fall of 22 is when we added the president role. And we
That's really
moved,
neat.
yeah, and we moved some people around on the leadership team. And Dick at the time became, CEO and executive. He was CEO and president, and then he became CEO and executive chairman, which has been great for me versus, just taking it over and him retiring or leaving for some reason, because I have him
Oh,
there to
sure.
help guide
The
me. And,
transition.
yeah.
Hmm.
And Arthur's still, he's extremely involved in the business as well.
It's so exciting. And I mean, there's probably a lot of questions and things we could get into just in your role, and really kind of like gearing that focus on, I think, women in the space and
Hmm.
um, your experience. And I think it's from your experience in your role as president, but also just PGA Tour Superstore playing such a big part of this industry. And um, what do you see, I think, or what have you seen over the last maybe even year? Because I think there's been a lot of good changes for women
Hmm.
in the sport. And I see PGA Tour Superstore, I mean, really focused on women. I think,
Hmm.
you have a really cool partnership with Women on Course. And I
Hmm.
didn't get to go, to meet everybody there, but I know you guys as a company too are trying to focus on how you connect with the female golfer.
We have,
Is it
and
a big part of your strategy?
it's a huge part of our strategy, and it actually candidly always has been.
Mm-hmm.
We, men naturally play the sport. It's 75%,
Yep.
male who play the sport. So we've always, and we have a lot of stores in resort markets. So we've always really focused on the female customer. And when you go into our locations, as you know, we have a tremendous assortment of women's apparel, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really important for us. So even if it's, we want to make sure we stand for that, just like we want to stand for juniors. We want to be
Yep.
the store where the family can come in, and it's not just about
Mm-hmm.
the dad or the brother or the son. We want the mom to have a place to shop, or the young, the young woman, and the kids as well. So the women's apparel business has always been important for us, but we're really starting to, we're also focused on women's clubs and the
Mm-hmm.
services aspect of it, clinics for women's, events in our stores. And
Yep.
the women's, the I think it's 40% of all new golfers are women. And
Mm-hmm.
it's now 25%, which is doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot higher than what it used to
Yeah.
be.
Yep.
And and that those are the people that are helping grow our sport, and it's
Mm-hmm.
critically important. And you mentioned Women on Course. There's a lot of organizations that we're involved with. And our chief marketing officer, her name happens to be Jill too. And so we're both very passionate about it, but it's not just us, not just because we're women driving it.
Sure.
Our owner and our CEO and everybody, we know that's where the growth is. And if you go in, sometimes you go into a pro shop, or you go into one of our competitors, and there's just not a big offering. So if you're a woman
Right.
who, you want to get into it, you care what you're playing with, you care what you look like, there's not a great selection. So it's one of our points of differentiation, and we're very proud of our women's assortment. And like I said, not just in apparel, but
Yeah.
in equipment and accessories. And it's such a big opportunity.
Yeah, and it is rare too. I think I mean PG Tour Superstore has to top the list for um even a woman out shopping for a quick outfit, right? Like I don't play a
Hmm.
lot. I'm going to a member guest. Where am I going to go? I mean, I know PG Tour Superstore would top my list, like you said, from just an assortment standpoint. Um and the different brands you carry, there's probably some of those house brands that we see kind of
Hmm.
in our green grass accounts, right? The private country clubs. But yeah, and you guys are experimenting with new brands, and I know myself appreciate that. I
Hmm.
think that's
Hmm.
really cool. And that's just a lot of exciting things, and especially from an offering standpoint for women these days. I know I
Yeah,
need new
and we
clubs, so I got to find the nearest
okay. Well,
PGA Tour
yeah. Well, we don't have a
Superstore.
store in we don't have a store in
No,
Cleveland
I
yet,
know.
but
I'm driving.
we do have a great website. And
Yep.
so and you mentioned a really good point. We cater to everybody. Everybody,
Hmm.
to all different types of people, all different income levels. So we really want to make sure we have a good, better, best assortment.
Hmm.
We want people to be able to come in and buy a pair of pants for $39.99, or a polo for
Sure.
$24.99. But we also have a very affluent customer in a lot of our
Hmm.
markets too. And that's where A Putnam fits in. And
Yep.
your brand is so sophisticated and beautiful, and it fills a different niche. And we want
Yeah,
to, and we may not carry a high end brand in every location that we have,
absolutely.
but we
Yep.
want to have a tiered offering, and all our stores are different. It's interesting when you look at our
Mhm.
stores in Palm Desert and Naples, our big resort markets. We do more women's apparel business than men's, which is really
Oh,
staggering when you
interesting.
think
Mhm.
about the split is 75-25. That's how many
Yeah.
women are in those markets. And when
Yep.
you have a retired population, they're playing golf and they're
Definitely.
playing together.
Yes.
So we really spend a lot of time making sure we have it right by store. So when
Yep.
you go into the stores I just mentioned, you're going to see a massive women's apparel selection. You might
Yes.
not see quite as much in some of our other locations, but more than you
Yeah.
would see in any of our competitors for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, data driven makes a lot of sense, especially
Mm-hmm.
in the apparel world of getting it right. And that's not an easy thing to get right. I mean, that's the daunting thing about apparel itself. So,
It's
very,
tricky. Well, from
it
your end,
is.
there's so many
Yep.
factors. It's fit and fabric and price
Oh
point,
my
and
gosh.
there's just so much to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And getting it right. I mean, we're a year down. May is kind of our point in which we started shipping product out last year. So we say we're
It's
coming up on our
awesome.
anniversary, and yeah, but it is women's apparel, and I think that's why it's always, especially in the golf space, related to just the division of sport, male female. But we look at like an approach shop, for instance, in terms of revenue and where that is. Like if I walked
Mm-hmm.
into a shop and they say that 35% of their revenue is from women's, I'm like, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
but they have a smaller floor space to decide on assortment. And we've gone through iterations of different pants, and how do we find pants are always hard. Everybody told me when I started, good luck with pants and shorts, but and
Yeah,
as
I,
women,
s-
we
I noticed
know.
on your website the one. What's it called? The kick flare? No,
Yeah,
what's
the kick
your
flare.
top
Yep.
selling? Yeah, and you have it on a
Yep.
5'10" model and a 5'2", and it's just funny. It's
Yes.
cropped on one, but it works for
Oh,
both.
100%. It is.
Yeah.
And, obviously from a manufacturing standpoint, deciding, and we carry a lot of petites because we're finding we have a lot of petite customers. And I can remember the first PO I placed, and I kind of went off of some data that was like the average American consumer, and I bought a little heavier and larger sizes. And I immediately saw that a lot of our customers are kind of extra small to medium, and
Mm-hmm.
lots of petites. Our petites went immediately. So I was like, well, you know what? Here on
Mm-hmm.
out, we're going to do some petite sizing on just
That's
about every
smart.
style.
That's
So,
smart because not everybody's
um,
doing that, and I get
no,
hit
and it's
up when I'm
hard,
in the stores. I get a lot of people like, "Do you carry petites?" So it's
but
important.
it is. And it's a hard thing to, I think, commit to from an inventory standpoint, or, even on your side too. You know, trying to understand what the market is and
Mm-hmm.
all that. So we're constantly learning, as I'm sure you guys are too, with introducing an assortment in the right store.
Yeah, well, congratulations on almost a year. Your product's
Oh my gosh,
beautiful.
thanks.
It's
Thanks.
beautiful.
We're having fun with that, and it's
Yeah.
um yeah, it's fun. I think to find other women too that are resonating with it. I
Mm-hmm.
get some people that's ask for, more performance product, and I'm like, well, we're not like the performance brand. I think we're right up somebody's alley that's a little bit of a casual golfer, and we'll play with some more performance pieces, but
Mm-hmm.
each assortment's a little bit more focused towards that resort side and getting the
Mm-hmm.
versatility. So it's been fun. And I've along the way, I'm sure you can relate to this, is that your product will never be for everybody, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll never check every single box so for
It's true.
everybody, but it is
It's true.
a challenge. So what is I'm just curious now that you said golf is a big part of your life, I think, as hobbies, and I know you've got to be so busy from a work standpoint, but outside of
Yeah.
PGA Tour Superstore, what's life like?
Um, a lot of golf. So I'm in a,
Yep.
I'm in a I'm in a Sunday group. Although
Oh,
our weather
cool.
hasn't been great, so I haven't played a lot of golf since. Um, I've played a few times since the holidays, and
Hmm.
this time a year ago, I was playing every single weekend. So that's how much
Yeah.
rain we've had. But I would say golf on the weekends, and I travel a lot for work. I spend a lot of time in
Hmm.
our stores, but really traveling. I have a son in Charleston and a son in New York, and my son in New York is he's my older of the two, and he just got engaged.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
yeah, so we're excited.
Cool.
So yeah, we travel to visit them. I'm really close with my siblings. So I go to Michigan. I like to ski. So
Okay.
just spent some time in Jackson Hole. I don't know. My favorite
Fun.
vacations are active vacations. I'm
It
not one
sounds
just to
like
lie
it.
on a beach chair. So yeah, I like to
Yep.
ski or golf, and I find like it's a little bit more fun because people just aren't staring at their phone the whole time. So
Oh
I
my
like
gosh.
to be
Yeah.
active, and so
Fun.
I would say a lot of travel,
Yeah.
both personal and professional.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's good. And you've got the ability to do that, I'm sure, with,
Yeah, I mean, and
again,
we're empty nesters now, so I
yeah.
never thought, and I know you can't relate to this right now with five
Not
kids,
yet.
but I never thought I would like people like what stresses you out? I'm like time. I just don't have
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and I don't really have time during the week, to speak of. But I do have a little bit more time on the weekends, and I
Mm-hmm.
promise you that day will eventually come for you. And then you're like, wow, I can go
What do I
spend
do with this time?
5 hours on the golf course and that's part of the reason
Yeah.
you don't play very much when you're
Oh,
having when you have
absolutely.
you can't go and not only is it 4 hours you have to it's an hour getting there and coming home and you may
Oh,
stay and have
yeah.
a drink or a meal or whatever so it becomes a six
Oh my
hour
gosh.
ordeal
It is.
so
It is.
you'll eventually get to do it again and I'm sure you can pop out and play 9 holes occasionally but
That's we do. Our babysitters are typically spent, especially in the summer weather here in Cleveland. The babysitters are spent getting away to play some golf. So, and it's
yeah.
funny because I remember when I started this business, my mom was thrilled because I came from industrial manufacturing. I was working remote but traveling internationally. And she was like, "I'm so excited you'll always be home and we'll be able to go play golf and you can sign up for the
Aw.
Tuesday 9 holers." And I was like, "Of course you get this, right? Like I golf even less now." So,
Yeah,
it's just funny. The nature of a
that's
startup,
funny.
it's oh,
That's nice. There's nothing like playing golf with your mom. Oh my
oh,
gosh,
it
it's
is.
the
It's super
best.
special. I know.
Yeah,
She's
it is.
my biggest cheerleader, as you can imagine. So,
Yeah, my mom's she's been gone for a while, but
oh,
my parents were too, and and I just have so many fond memories of playing golf
mm-hmm.
with my parents, especially my mom, and it's funny when I ended up in this position. My sisters and my siblings are so supportive, and they're like, "Oh, mom and dad would be, they'd be so
Oh,
proud," and they would get such a kick out of the fact that
oh,
you are working in the golf industry of all things. So
yes. Isn't that incredible?
it's yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's really special, and that it is. It reminds me that taking just a breather once in a while is okay to go do
Yeah,
do those
yeah,
things. Hard. I
yeah.
mean, you got to remind yourself that there are other things to focus
Yes, there
on. So,
are.
yeah, it's a crazy, crazy busy time, but very enjoyable. And I can't tell you how nice it was to get a bit of your time. Like I said, I know you're so busy, and it's really special. Like an honor to speak to somebody in your role and just where you've come from with your apparel background and all that. It's really
Well, I
neat.
appreciate that, and I love I talked about and you can relate being a female in a male dominated industry, and you asked me earlier like the changes I've seen, and
Hmm.
it's so nice to meet other other women in the industry, and and you are even on the hard good side of the business, you are starting to see more women
Hmm.
get into it and organizations are around golf. So it's evolving, not just
Yeah.
on the participation side, but in the industry as well. And it's really nice to see. And I meet a ton of women, and we gravitate towards each other, so it's fun because
Yeah.
you foster a relationship and like, yep, I can relate. You're the only woman at Callaway or, or Titleist or wherever it
Right.
might be, but not only one, I'm
Yeah.
exaggerating. But, so
Sure.
it's, we have to look out for each other. And,
Yep.
it's part of my mission now that I've been in the industry a while. And now that I'm, at this stage in my career is, how do I help other women and how do I bring other
Hmm.
people along and, take them under my wing. And, it's not just
Totally.
about me trying to get ahead right now. It's how do I help other people get ahead? And
It's really cool.
and people who are trying to balance a family at the same time because
Hmm.
let's face it, our husbands are a great support system, but
Hmm.
a lot of it ends up on the mom, and it's hard if you want to have
Yeah.
a career to balance both. So I enjoy talking to you as well, and I appreciate the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. There's this Women in Golf has been a really cool way to meet people like yourself, and I think and the connection. So it makes this industry, which anybody will say whatever industry they're in is small, right? From
Hmm.
the people you know and networking. But this whole like niche of women's golf is just it feels really special. And it's
Hmm.
I think that's what's so neat about it is the kind of camaraderie, like you said, that it's just it's been really special. We feel really fortunate to bring women like yourselves, I think, to the table and share your story. I know you probably have gotten to share it here and there, but it is really neat, really
Yeah,
fun.
it's always
So
fun. I enjoy it. So I appreciate the
yeah,
invitation.
absolutely. Well, we'll keep in touch, and anything we can help you with, you'll have to let us know. But we're excited to share this with our audience and yours, and we'll take it from here.